It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. Although the main opposition party announced it will officially end its marathon filibuster against a controversial anti-terrorism bill, the last man standing at the podium, floor leader Lee Jong-il, pushes himself to delay the vote. The strongest sanctions yet on Pyongyang could have been passed by the UNSC earlier today. But Russia, despite agreeing on the need to punish North Korea for its recent provocations, asked for a one-day review, seeking some minor changes. Winning big on Super Tuesday is crucial for U.S. presidential candidates, and Donald Trump did just that, leaving his Republican rivals in the dust, while Hillary Clinton picks up momentum against Democratic rival Bernie Sanders. Our starting point today is the National Assembly, where the main opposition party floor leader is still speaking even after announcing an end to a marathon filibuster that's now well into its 9th day. We connect live to our Shin Se-min, who is standing by at the National Assembly. Se-min, is the filibuster close to ending? Are there any signs of it?
Well, Daniel, no one seems to have an answer to that just yet. The last speaker of the ongoing filibuster, the Minju Party of Korea, floor leader Lee Jong-il, has been taking stage since 7 a.m. this morning up until now, running for some nearly 12 hours. Now, it's not much of a surprise considering that the floor leader had postponed all his afternoon schedules to Thursday, indicating that he won't be giving a brief speech. Now, it's hard to tell how long he'll continue to speak, as party members seem to unsure when asked. Now, the floor leader had announced late Tuesday evening that the party had decided to bring the 9-day filibuster to an end, saying it should not stand as an obstacle to an upcoming parliamentary elections next month.
Well, Simon, interesting to notice that the floor leader also was calling on the opposition parties to band together ahead of the election. What made him shift his focus to this idea?
Yes, during his speech, floor leader Lee Jong-il called on the opposition parties to join forces ahead of the parliamentary election slated for April 13th, saying that the only way to overturn the counterterrorism bill once it gets enacted is to stand against the ruling Saenuri party by gaining majority seats at the parliament. Now, that same remark was reiterated by the Minju Party leader Kim Jong-un during a regular meeting this morning. Listen to this.
By joining forces, the opposition bloc will be able to win the general election next month. Then the opposition forces can even overturn the counter-terrorism bill by making revisions to the problematic clause.
Now, adding that there isn't much time left, the Minju Party has stressed that it would do all it can to win the coming election.
Well, Samin, it looks like the floor leader will keep on going as long as there's breath in his lungs, so we don't know when it will actually come to an end. When it does, though, what are we looking at in terms of the counterterrorism bill and other pending bills?
Right. In terms of the current procedural rules, now once the filibuster comes to an end, the contested counterterrorism bill will be put up for a vote, along with other pending issues like you have mentioned. Now, those include the redrawn electoral map, as well as the North Korean human rights bill, as they had already been as the agreement had already been met last week. Now, ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Won Yu-chol has been urging his lawmakers to be on full standby for whenever that happens. Now, Won also told ruling party lawmakers that it is crucial that all of them be present for the vote, which will take place immediately after the filibuster session ends. He added that each of their votes is crucial, as they don't expect the opposition party lawmakers to stick around for the voting session. Daniel?
All right, that was our National Assembly correspondent Shin Se-min with the updates. Thank you for that. Moving on, the UN Security Council has delayed its meeting to vote on the new resolution on North Korea's recent nuclear and long-range missile tests. Connie Kim explains how Russia pushed back the event by around 24 hours from the original set time.
The 15 members of the Security Council are set to vote on a new resolution on North Korea on Wednesday morning at the UN headquarters in New York. Officials say Russia had asked for a one-day review of the draft resolution, pushing back the voting schedule. The conventional rule is that following the Council's agreement on a draft resolution, a so-called blue text is printed, upon which a vote must wait 24 hours. Although Russia, a veto-wielding member of the UN Security Council, has been holding up an agreement on the final draft resolution, its ambassador to the UN said the resolution is necessary because of the challenges coming from North Korea. Speaking to reporters in New York on Tuesday, Vitaly Churkin said Moscow had some concerns about the draft resolution that they've discussed with the U.S. delegation, adding that the U.S. had accommodated some, but not all, of their concerns. That's why Russia wanted changes made to the draft at the last minute, according to Japanese broadcaster NHK. A revised copy obtained by the broadcaster shows an exception has been made on a ban on aviation fuel to North Korea. The fresh set of sanctions will allow the sale and supply of aviation fuel to civilian North Korean aircraft. An official in charge of mineral resources trade between North Korea and Russia has also been dropped from the initial list of individuals and organizations subject to UN sanctions. With the change, 12 organizations and 16 individuals will be slapped with sanctions if the resolution passes as expected. Since North Korea carried out its nuclear test in early January, Security Council members put their heads together to draw up the strongest sanctions yet on Pyongyang. If adopted, mandatory inspections of cargo, an expansion of a weapons ban, and a trade ban on coal, iron, and gold are expected to pressure the regime to give up its nuclear weapons program and encourage Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The draft resolution on North Korea was one of the main topics of discussion during UN Chief Ban Ki-moon's closed-door meeting Tuesday with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Geneva. Moscow officials say Ban and Lavrov talked about the planned UN sanctions on Pyongyang for its recent provocations and other issues related to the Korean Peninsula. The two are in Switzerland for the ongoing session of the UN Human Rights Council. And in Moscow, senior Russian diplomats met with the U.S. ambassador to Russia for talks on the North Korea sanctions. Russia has said that it's yet to make a final decision on the draft resolution, but has signaled that there should be no problem providing its demands are considered by the Security Council. North Korea has declared its intent to boycott the UN Human Rights Council. Pyongyang's top diplomat made the announcement in Geneva on Tuesday, while back home, leader Kim Jong-un visited a missile factory, displaying clearly the regime's determination to stick to its nuclear ambitions. Park Ji-won tells us more.
North Korean Foreign Minister Lee So-yong says his country will no longer participate in the UN Human Rights Council, claiming that the council applies double standards and singles out North Korea's human rights record. He said Tuesday the council had become contaminated with political point scoring and selectivity.
It's deplorable that the Human Rights Council, whose unique mission, unlike other UN bodies, is to promote and protect human rights, has been turned into a mechanism for politicization.
Lee said his country provided education, housing, and jobs for its people, and yet North Korea was the target of a human rights racket. He added Pyongyang will ignore any decisions made by the human rights body.
Any resolutions to be adopted against the DPRK in such sessions will remain nothing but proof of partiality and double standards. Whether or not such resolutions are to be put to a vote will be none of our business, and we will never ever be bound by them.
Back in North Korea, leader Kim Jong-un paid a visit to a factory known to have made missile components for the regime. That's according to a report published Wednesday by the North Korean Central News Agency. The young leader inspected the same factory with his father and then leader Kim Jong-il back in 2011, before the elder Kim's death in the same year. Analysts see the move as a sign of North Korea's determination to go ahead with its weapons development, despite a new UN sanctions resolution that's about to go up for a vote. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Switching over to a different story now, the Hallyu or Korean wave has taken off in various ways in recent years, and now the Korean government is fostering the industry as a new growth engine for the country. Song Ji-sun explains how it plans to do just that.
Speaking at the opening of an expo called Made in Korea, displaying cultural products like Korean food, crafts, and traditional clothing, President Park Geun-hye said that now is the time to create a convergence of traditional culture and modern technology to create new industries through culture. Noting that over 2 million people visited the Korean pavilion at the Milan Expo last year, President Park called for a renaissance of Korean culture.
우리 문화가 단순한 호기심을 넘어 폭넓은 사랑을 받고 인류의 문화 자산으로 발전해 갈 수 있음을 보여주는 생생한 증거들이 계속 나오고 있습니다. 분야 간 경계를 허물고 우리 고유의 전통 문화에 산업의 옷을 입혀서 경제 재도약의 기반을 마련하는 데에 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다.
To promote the country's brand value, the government began certifying cultural products this year, and the Expo showcases many of these items. The event will be open to the public from Thursday to Monday at Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul, and will travel to Gwangju and Busan in the coming weeks. President Park said the answer to realizing creative economy lies in culture and in bringing together the two key initiatives of our administration, cultural prosperity and the creative economy. 송지선, Arirang News.
A short-lived uptick in Korea's overall output ended after a solitary month as the manufacturing sector was hit hard by slowing global demand. And as plunging exports continue to haunt the economy that's already struggling with sluggish domestic demand, pressure mounts for the government to introduce new stimulus. Hwang Ji-hye has this report.
Korea's output across all industries was down 1.2% in January from the previous month, after going up over 1% in December of last year, breaking a 2-month downward streak. The figure sank again. Statistics Korea says the drop came from a fall in production in the mining and manufacturing sectors, which were hit hard by slumping outbound shipments. Korea's exports plunged for the 14th straight month in February, marking the longest downslide the country has ever posted and the third consecutive month of a double-digit drop. With that, experts say the outlook for Asia's fourth largest economy is dimming.
This year's projection for exports is still not bright, with global demand slowing, especially in emerging economies. And consumption and investment that had shown signs of a pickup late last year are now shrinking.
Facing the end of a temporary tax cut for automobiles in January that was introduced by the government to boost spending, retail sales actually dropped nearly 1.5% from the previous month. And some experts say more stimulus, including a budget supplement, is necessary to prop up the growth momentum and reach the government's 3% growth target. But with regard to using monetary policy, experts are rather skeptical.
It's better to fight against uncertainties with fiscal policies than monetary policies in current economic conditions, because adjusting the key rate has not been effective so far in boosting spending and investment.
So, in other words, people have been reluctant to spend for other reasons like post-retirement preparation, not because the interest rate is too high. The same is true for businesses. They're piling up cash because they lack the confidence to invest under the current conditions, not because of borrowing costs. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Now, we've been hearing a lot of reports of China's slow growth dealing a blow to the global economy. A professor at Johns Hopkins University and the IMF's former deputy managing director says another risk factor is the current situation in the European Union. KiMoon shares with us Ann Kruger's insights.
The crisis in the Eurozone stands as the biggest downside risk facing the global economy this year. That's according to Ann Kruger, the former first deputy managing director of the IMF, who says there are many challenges that could shape the fate of the European Union in the months to come.
While the situation in Greece is not immediately critical, there are still chronic issues in that country which could turn to crisis, but it's by no means over. Ukraine has difficulties, as we know, both economic and geopolitical. And in the rest of the Eurozone, there are difficulties that must be resolved. The British are slated to hold an election on whether to stay in the European Union or in June, and there is considerable uncertainty as to what the outcome will be. Refugee crisis which is, of course, very big and constitutes a fundamental challenge to the Europeans and to their unity.
Kruger, currently a professor at Johns Hopkins University, said the outlook for the rest of the world doesn't look so rosy either, with faltering global commodity prices and a slowdown in China tugging on the global economy. She said we are living in a two-track world in which recovery and recession coexist.
On one hand, the outlook for the American economy and a few others is good, as I said, while on the other hand, there are a large number of countries whose prospects are much poorer. While there are a few countries in the middle, their near-term future will be determined in significant part by the balance between the expansion of the countries doing well and the recession or the slowdown or the stagnation, call it what you will, in the countries that are doing badly.
On a more positive note, the former policymaker said that the American economy continues to improve, and if it sustained its momentum, it may have an impact on the global economy down the line. But she also noted that the U.S. is not as dominant as before, and that it too is affected by global uncertainties. KiMoon, Arirang News.
Turning our attention to the race for the White House, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton racked up the biggest wins on Super Tuesday as 11 states and 1 territory cast their votes on party nominees for the presidential election. Republican candidate Donald Trump swept 7 out of 11 states following his victories in 3 of the first 4 contests last month. Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton also won 7 states, including Massachusetts, which was largely expected to support her in-party rival Bernie Sanders. The Vermont senator scored victories in his home state, as well as in Oklahoma, Minnesota, and Colorado. Super Tuesday is the single largest voting day for the presidential primaries and caucuses, and the results are typically seen as a make or break for presidential campaigns. That's all from us at this hour. Thank you for watching.